Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. Brian, you just got back from an elk hunt with your daughter. I was seeing the pictures. You guys scored.
We sure did. She got her cow and I got my bull. We both used that new 7mm PRC.
All right, and you've been around long enough. We see new cartridges come, and there's another one, and there's another one, and there's another one. And I have this terrible tendency to say, I don't need that. We don't need that. It doesn't matter if it was the 6 Creedmoor or whatever it was. We've already got the 6 5x55, yada, yada, yada. And then later on, I come to realize, actually, maybe there really was something to that. So, that being the case, you've shot the 7 PRC, brand new cartridge, 7mm. Yeah, ballistics, just in terms of velocity, it looks a lot like a 7 Remington mag. What do you think?
It sure does. So I don't think you have a bad tendency, by the way, to hold off. I love supporting our industry. I love seeing new products come out, but I'm right there with you. I am very slow to adopt a new cartridge. Matter of fact, you mentioned my book needing updated. When my book came out, I still wasn't on to 6.5 Creedmoor yet. I still was saying, guys, 6.5 Creedmoor is great. It's new, it's fancy, but every year something new and fancy comes out. And I'm glad you and I didn't jump at it, because if we jumped at the 6.5 Creedmoor, the concept of it, I would have gun safes full of 260 Remington rifles right now, because 260 Remington's about the same thing as a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yes, it is.
So I waited to see which one won out. I waited to see if it had staying power. I waited to see if it really was going to make sense. And once it got adopted, and now I realize how much sense it makes, now I'm fully on board, and I shoot 6.5 Creedmoor for almost everything now. Heck, the last 3 or 5 elk I've shot have been 6.5 Creedmoor. I took one to Africa.
Hey,
I shot everything with one, yeah.
I read in an online group that 6.5 Creedmoor bounces off of elk.
I mean, now I would consider it the bare minimum, and I don't necessarily recommend people use it, because everyone's abilities and needs are different. But it can be done, and it has worked for me and my daughter for the last few elk. But every once in a while, a new cartridge comes along that makes sense to me, and the 300 PRC was the first one that did. When that 300 PRC came out, I looked at it, and it was the magic of the 6.5 Creedmoor, just like someone put it on a photocopy machine and enlarged it 30%.
Right.
All the dimensions were the same, the shoulder angles, the neck length, all the magic that makes the 6.5 Creedmoor work so well was adopted and brought over to a bigger cartridge.
What is
so
the
now
magic?
Most of my target rifles are those too.
So what's the magic? What makes it work?
Well, have you ever noticed, so let's say 10 years ago and before, you would have a nice 308. You talked about a custom rifle. Some rifles were good shooters, some rifles weren't, even from the same manufacturers. Same make and model rifle, you buy 2 of them, one's a great shooter, one's not. Or your rifle really liked one brand of ammunition, but it could not shoot the other brand. Means they were finicky on which bullet was being used, which velocity, and things like that. The magic of that 6.5 Creedmoor is, if you keep an open mind about it, just about every single rifle out there can shoot just about every make and model of ammo pretty darn well. And the reason is we figured out modern manufacturing and tolerances that have that right neck length to the right shoulder angle to the right case volume to the bullet sticking out the magic amount, that it just works in almost every rifle. And that's why 6.5 Creedmoor is such a great round, and it's going to be around for, I think, for a long time, and it's such a great target round. The 300 PRC is the same thing. I haven't shot one yet that is not just a shooter of a rifle.
The other thing about the 6.5 Creedmoor, and a lot of people make fun of it, because they like their 7 mags or their 300 mags and all, but I think not only is it inherently accurate, but it's also very shootable because of the lower level of recoil.
Exactly right. For now, I was a solidly 308 guy because so many tax dollars have been spent teaching me to shoot 308, and now I'm only 6.5. I have no reason for my life to shoot a 308 anymore. I shoot targets better with a 6.5 Creedmoor. I hunt better with a 6.5 Creedmoor. It's a lighter, less recoiling rifle. Past 200 yards, it has more energy on the target than a 308 does.
Yep.
So this little bullet that recoils less and is lighter to carry around actually is more effective at hunting at distance. Why wouldn't I take it?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? All right, so here's a question for you. We were talking about doing all this practice stuff, and ammo's expensive and blah, blah, blah. Is there a reason we couldn't do a lot of this get-off-the-bench practice with a 22 rimfire?
No, you definitely could. And I'm glad you did a 22 versus something like a 223 or something like that, because good 22 ammo is fairly inexpensive. You can get great results out of it.
Right.
I think you can get even cheaper by just dry firing. I solidly believe, Tom, that especially new to intermediate shooters should be spending more time dry firing than they should be live firing. That's how you get better. I have my students in courses sit there for an entire morning sometimes just dry firing, because everything you do or fail to do with that rifle is put into the rifle up into the point it goes click and a little bit of follow through. If you ever notice, whenever you flinch, because I still flinch sometimes, it still happens. I still catch myself, especially with a handgun, every once in a while flinching and just laughing at myself when I do it.
Yep.
Well, if you're honest with yourself, if you're like me, the times you catch yourself flinching is when the gun was empty.
Yes.
That's not because we just magically flinched that time the gun was empty. That means we were flinching every other time, but the recoil was hiding the flinch.
It covers it up.
Yeah, so why in the world would you try to learn how to do what you need to do when you have a chance of recoil covering it? I'd rather you dry fire, practice doing everything you're doing, and have the reticle be exactly where you want it to be when the gun goes click. Do that over and over and over. That's very inexpensive. It costs no ammo to do that, and it's going to make you a much better shooter.
I was talking to a young hunter in our neighborhood a few weeks ago, and I said he was like a week out from going on his hunt. And I said, here's the deal. Every night between now and when you go, I want you to make 100 dry fires with your rifle. And that takes no time. That's 5 minutes, honestly. You just you can do that in 5 minutes, but I want 100 clicks dry firing with the reticle on something and holding it on there after the shot, and just over and over and over again. Just, if nothing else, just to get you where you feel so comfortable handling the rifle and working the bolt and know what the trigger feels like and everything else.
That's a great advice. If they were a newer shooter, a brand new shooter, or especially if they're a younger shooter, I would mix in there a couple minutes of just finding things in the scope. I see so often children and new shooters have that. We've all seen it. You take someone to the range and they're new to shoot. They're moving their head around. They can't see through the scope completely without it being a little bit of scope shadow. Then when they do find perfectly clear image, then they can't find the target. Well, let's recognize that's an issue and fix it. I take the kids out, and if I'm out in the field just to practice, I'll stand there with my daughter, for example, and say, hey, you see that tree over there? Describe it to her while she's looking at her eyes. Find it in the scope, please. And it takes them a while when they first start, but after a while, Tom, you and I can pick up a rifle and it's already aiming at what we were looking at.
Right. But we've done it 10,000 times. Yeah. Yeah,
it takes practice too.
Well, it's the old deal of learning to look. Don't look at the scope. Look at the target or wherever you're looking at, and let the scope intercept your view.
Correct. But getting that rifle to fit you, getting comfortable, like you said, with the rifle makes a lot of difference. Yeah. And these new cartridges, to bring it back around to the 7 PRC, I'm a big fan of it. I personally am going to use 300 PRC if I have a choice, because I'm bigger and I like the bigger cartridge for the distance. But I'm going to probably recommend the 7 PRC more because you can fit it into a normal length action. It can fit into something like a Tikka where a 300 PRC can't. It has considerably less recoil. I mean, for example, my 11-year-old daughter shot her elk with it just fine, had no problems with it at all. And even though it may not give you a whole lot more on paper than the 7mm Rem mag, what it does let you do is get those bullets, these modern, long, sleek bullets, to stick out a lot longer.
Yep,
and it gives you a lot more forgiving chamber dimensions, and I think it's the way to go.
There you go. Hey, Ryan, I'm out of time. I'm just going to tell, where do people need to go to find what you're doing?
Check out Gun University. That's my newest project, and everything I do is there, gununiversity.com.
Perfect. Ryan Cleckner, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you here. You take care, my friend. All right, 866-TALK-GUN. We're open lines. Let's talk.